I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
I'm Anna.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 66th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, where we discuss Star Trek old and new. And tonight we are talking about the season finale of Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2. Written by Michelle Paradise, Ginny Lumet, and Alex Kurtzman, and directed by Olatunde Osunsanmi. So these are the same people who wrote and directed last week's episode, as we discussed last week. Dave, you were not here. You were
I was not here. I was partying it up in New Orleans. By the way, I did. I haven't watched all of the podcast yet, but I watched most of it. And thanks for the well wishes for my niece Sammy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, your sister-in-law got some acknowledgement also.
Whatever.
Allison, I hope you heard that. But enough about Dave and his stupid family. We got some Star Trek to talk about.
Fair enough.
This is a big deal. We got
to have something has to take precedent, and easily Trek takes precedence over my family.
You know, we got some.
How lucky they are.
So we got some exciting stuff to talk about in this episode. This is a really big episode, and before we go too far into it, just want to say there's a little bit of Trek news. We got some new Star Trek casting information. Mm-hmm. 3 new additional cast members. I'm not familiar with any of these actors or actresses, so I'm not even going to waste time delving into that. I'll have a link to the article, but we have so much to talk about that I feel like we just got to jump straight into our main topic here.
But in the background, the Picard show is percolating.
Yes.
Hashtag the Picard show.
They have actually started production on Picard show. There are cameras rolling on that in California. So
really?
we are months away from the return of Jean-Luc Picard.
So he's being filmed even as we speak?
Well, I mean,
his stentorian voice.
It's kind of late, so probably not right this moment, but...
There's time zones.
Yeah, but
if they're running late on a Friday, if it's running late.
Yeah, we are recording this on a Good Friday night, so I don't know if they're going to be working on that show right now, but production has started.
Right.
But enough about Picard. We're here to talk about Discovery. And before we dive too deep into this episode, we will each present our opening statements.
Yeah.
Well, we're not like in a courtroom.
I know, that's what opening statements is, courtroom. That's your terminology.
Well, what do you want to call it then?
No, I like it.
Okay.
We are in a courtroom.
I mean, we did this the entire season.
The court of public opinion.
We went through all 14 episodes before you said anything, before there was any objection.
I know. I wasn't objecting. I was actually very into it.
Because they do that in the courtroom, too.
I played Phoenix Wright. I know how this goes.
You're perjuring yourself? I think we're kind of objecting.
All right, go on, Fatheree. Yeah, let me... I retract the statement. Please strike it...
from the record.
From the record, yes.
I like that we get into all the legal talk when we don't have the attorney on the podcast who has discussed some of these episodes with us. But yeah, Trenton didn't make it. Holly is not here. We only have room for 4 people. But yeah, we do have Brian and Anna with us to close out the season.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes, Holly has to go throw axes at things early in the morning. So.
That sounds fun. Can I go do that?
And apparently get compliments from Ensign Mount.
Yes,
yes. More on that later. But we'll each give a spoiler-free, very general reaction to the episode. We'll start with Brian and just go down the line.
Okay. I guess as a standalone piece of episode, I give it about a 7.5, solidly entertaining. Not the best Discovery I've ever seen, but thoroughly enjoyable and functional on that plane. As far as wrapping up the whole season, I've got to give it like an 8 or an 8.5. I thought they did a really good job of taking all the crazy that we've had spread out for a whole season and pulling it all together into one big flash. And I was like, yeah, that's how you do a season lock arc and close it all off. So yeah, I liked it.
They were like, we had a plan, and all the pieces do in many ways come together in this.
Yes, very much so. And I love it.
All right.
I had some not necessarily mixed feelings. I just by the end of it, I was very fatigued. It was emotionally
It was very
exhausting.
actiony. It was 72% action.
Yeah,
it's a lot to
more
take
than
in.
that. It was more than 72% action. I'm pretty sure, but there was a satisfying feeling to watching every single piece of the puzzle finally come together.
Mm-hmm.
I actually can't think of many loose ends, save for one that I won't talk about now.
But we'll get around to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should get around to those because I have several.
So I was pretty pleased with it overall. I'm not a big fan of hour-long battles, so they're probably never gonna win me over on that. But I felt like they had more good character moments and perhaps even elicited more emotional responses from me than I thought they would.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
I thought it was solid.
I'm gonna quick preface this by saying I'm a fan of the Lord of the Rings movies pretty solidly, just books as well, and I can deal with a kind of long, weepy ending and my friends, you bow to no one, and all of that, and long goodbyes at the docks. But the 2 episodes of the back to back felt a little bit like more of that than even I wanted, and I thought it was a little bit of that. I feel like every single person had to have their kind of moment in the sun where they said farewell, confess that they'd always admire the person, to the point where when Stamets told Jet Reno that he still hates her, I was like, yeah, finally somebody did not get too misty.
Yeah.
I did like how things came together, and I thought I was like, okay, this is actually this has been a cool kind of puzzle box of a season, and although I might quibble with some of the stuff, I did like the way all the reveals kind of finally came out. So I liked the episode, but I was fatigued in maybe a different way. I think I was rather than the battles, which I would have, liked maybe more, I don't know, raw plot or character stuff. It was more there was so much sincerity that even I, who likes sincerity, was like, oh my god, people hate each other a little bit. So mixed bag for me. Fatheree?
I have to say it was also a mixed bag for me, but for very different reasons.
Uh-huh.
I actually enjoyed the more emotional moments in the episode. I actually enjoyed the big actiony moments in the episode. I had problems, however, with some of the plot. I feel like there were a bunch of contrivances, some things that didn't quite make sense. There were some mysteries established earlier in the season that either didn't get resolved, or for me, they raised more questions here than they answered. I don't want to come off as too nitpicky. I'm not here to bash the episode, but there's a bunch of stuff in there that I dislike. There's also a bunch of stuff in here that made me smile, that made me say, oh my god, that looks so cool, or oh wow, what a neat idea. There's also stuff that made me go oh, what the hell, why would you do that? But
Fatheree, we've mentioned Lost once or twice on this show before, and
I'm not a fan.
Right, but you also haven't seen the whole thing. I have seen the whole thing. And
I read all the Wikipedia articles though, so I know everything that happens.
Well, that's amazing.
And I'm glad I didn't watch it.
It is definitely not. As everybody I'm sure knows, Wikipedia is a perfect summation of a show and gives you all of its qualities by just laying bare its plot. But Lost was a show that I think, for many who made it through, it actually still had a pretty decent emotional resonance at the end. But there were a number of things where you're like, oh, that really didn't tie things together, or why did they choose to focus on this and not explain that? And so I feel this actually veered a little bit to. I have to mention this because Lost was J.J. Abrams produced, and J.J. Abrams did the 2009 series. And I know the 2009 series seemed influential on this season. That I think it has some of this show has actually always had a little bit of that. a little bit of a, if it's dramatic, that's more important than that it makes perfect sense.
Yes, but this was some of the worst of it, especially when they were saying this is going to be the episode that explains everything. And I really enjoyed season 2, but towards the back end of the season, there were some questionable stuff, in my opinion. And I'm not really sure if I feel like this episode sticks the landing for me. I think they did some, sticking the landing.
I thought it did a better job sticking the landing than the last episode of season 1.
Well, that was where I had some issues too.
I was like, this is much better.
In season 1, I was a little. If y'all check the tape, it's on record. I had some issues with the finale of season 1. I wasn't quite sure how I felt about that. Even though I loved seeing the Orions, I loved visiting Kronos. There was a bunch of cool stuff in there, but
Father, where was I on that? You have did I like the ending of season 1?
Yeah, but
I trust your memory or your revisit better than I do myself, because in my mind's eye, in my memory, I like season 1 better as well.
Well, I like season 2 much more than season 1, but
I'm talking about the finale exclusively.
Okay, but I don't know, like this finale, like there's a bunch of stuff in here I like, but there's a bunch of
stuff that made you go rawr.
A little bit, and there were a bunch of plot holes that I'm still trying to find ways to explain. However, I feel like it should be my job to figure that stuff out.
There was a couple of things I wasn't clear on, but everything was happening so fast and I was slightly distracted. I assume that if I watch it again, it'll make sense. Perhaps not. Perhaps that would reduce my rating.
Yeah, but
I am just trusting that I missed some detail.
Do the plot holes really matter if you enjoyed it, though?
That is, by the way, that discussion is, I think, lost in a in microcosm. And I can say that, like, that's a case where I did. And this is overall a case where I did too. But do we want to do the summation of the quick?
Sure, yeah, we can go ahead and engage our warp speed summary.
And then we'll dive into your question as we get into those sticky things, as to like when we to our closing statements, to use the legalese.
Yeah.
We need a little bell. Ding.
Yeah, to go with our Starfleet courtroom that apparently we're in. This episode's on court martial.
Yeah.
By the way, we should get Trenton to do help us do the what's the one where Data's on trial?
Measure of a Man.
Measure of a Man.
Next Generation Season 2.
And court martial to assess the legal aspects of them. Not too hardcore.
No, because I've heard them bitch about that stuff.
Oh no.
It's not pretty.
But they haven't. Our audience hasn't. All right, what do we got? Hit it, Father.
So our warp speed summary. We open on the standoff before the big final showdown with Control. The Discovery, the Enterprise, and their 200 shuttlecraft and tactical flyers that they somehow managed to fit on their ships are ready to face off against the Section 31 fleet. The combined Starfleet crews have one job. Allow Burnham to create a wormhole in the Red Angel suit and get through it so that the Discovery can follow her into the future. The Control-possessed Leyland has a view-screen exchange with acting Captain Saru. It's clear neither side is willing to stand down. Leyland launches an armada of drones from his ships. A very Battlestar Galactica-looking battle begins, and both of our hero ships begin taking a beating. The drones make a run on the Discovery's shields to weaken them so that they can cripple the ship and Control may obtain the sphere data it has been seeking all season long. In efforts to buy the Disco crew more time, Queen Poe of planet Zahia boards a shuttlecraft that leads a squadron to go on the offensive, while Pike orders the Enterprise in between the Discovery and the drones. Burnham leads the fabrication team down the corridors to the shuttle bay, rushing to launch the new Red Angel, while still adding the final few touches to the new suit. On their way, Stamets is impelled by falling debris caused by battle damage on the ship. Burnham and Spock must continue on, while Tilly takes the injured Stamets to sickbay. In sickbay, Stamets is tended for by his ex-lover, Dr. Culber. Turns out Culber didn't want to leave the Discovery after all, and didn't want to leave Stamets. He has to induce a coma on Stamets, but promises that he will patch him up and that they can rekindle their relationship. If anyone survives this battle, that is, Spock and Burnham reach the shuttle bay. Spock loads the now charged time crystal into the suit, and it morphs around Burnham like Iron Man armor. Spock pilots a shuttle to guide Burnham, while she takes to flight and follows him. Pike orders Poe and the other smaller craft to escort Burnham. She makes it to a safe distance from the battle and lands on a big chunk of space debris. From here, she should be able to open the wormhole and escape into the future. But as soon as the Disco lowered her shields to launch Burnham, Leyland beamed aboard. He makes his way onto the bridge, armed with a phaser rifle. It looks a lot like that ominous future we were shown in the previous episode, in which Leyland murders the Discovery crew and obtains the sphere data. He proceeds into the Discovery science lab and locks himself in. Things take a bad turn on the Enterprise when the ship's forward saucer section is struck with an undetonated torpedo. Again, something that was shown in the Time Crystal Prophecies last week. If the torpedo goes off, it will blow a hole through 4 decks of the Enterprise. The Enterprise and Discovery continue to take damage as the battle rages on. Luckily, help arrives in the form of a Klingon cleave ship that comes plowing through some Section 31 ships. Tyler somehow found time in this battle to go all the way back to Klingon space and recruit his ex-GF, Chancellor Laurel, into the battle. But they also brought some Ba'ul starfighters from Kaminar, being led by Saru's sister, Sarana. And on top of that, we get some D7 battle action as well. Today is a good day to die. Meanwhile, Burnham is having some unexpected trouble working the Red Angel suit. She is unable to open the wormhole into the future. Spock concludes that before Burnham can go into the future, she must first travel back in time and cause the 5 red bursts the Disco crew have witnessed this season. Each red burst led the crew to a piece of the puzzle they needed to complete this mission. If not for the red burst, they would not have found Jet Reno, who aided in charging the time crystal. They would not have discovered the planet Terralisium, the home of the Red Angel's future base. They would not have freed the Kelpians, who are now allies in this battle, or obtained a time crystal of Borath, or have gotten Poe to use her patented crystal tech to charge the crystal. Spock asks Burnham to take a logical leap of faith and trust that by traveling to the past, she will be able to save the future. Burnham sets the coordinates for all 5 previous points in time and is shot into a wormhole created by the suit. We're then treated to a 2001-style visual acid trip as Burnham traverses space and time. We see her at the Hiawatha from the episode Brother. We see her at Terralisium in New Eden, Kaminar in The Sound of Thunder, Borath in Through the Valley of Shadows, and Zahia in Such Sweet Sorrow Part 1. While Burnham is doing her thing, we got a classic ticking clock situation on the Enterprise. The lodged torpedo is gonna blow if it can't be disarmed. Number 1 and Admiral Cornwell try and fail to find a way to disarm it. With only 5 minutes left before detonation, Pike makes his way down to Deck 5. Admiral Cornwell lets him know there is nothing left to try on the torpedo, and it's going to go off in 90 seconds. The only way to save the rest of the ship is for one of them to stay near the torpedo and seal the blast door. Pike wants to be the one to die saving the ship, but we all know he is meant for another future. And somehow Admiral Cornwell knows this too. She orders him back on the turbo lift, and she closes the blast door. The torpedo explodes, killing the Admiral, but the rest of the ship survives. On the Discovery, Leyland pours through the ship's computer, searching for the sphere data, but is interrupted when Giorgio and Non bust down the door. Giorgio teases Leyland that she knows where the data is hidden. Her and Non make a run for it. Leyland takes the bait and pursues. Leyland chases them into a corridor, and Giorgio versus Controlland Round 2 begins. But this rematch is occurring during a gravity malfunction. Giorgio and Leyland fight each other Inception hallway style on the walls and ceiling of the corridor. Eventually, the two combatants make their way to the spore room. Leyland seems to have gained the upper hand. He points out it was easy to predict Giorgio's algorithm, that she is keeping the sphere data on the Spore Room computer console, the two most valuable assets of the ship kept together. But Giorgio is not as helpless as it appears. She breaks free from Leyland's grip, and she kicks him into the Spore chamber. She locks him in there, but his nanotech-enhanced strength is a real bitch, and he starts hammering away on the cube door. Meanwhile, Michael returns from her trip through the past. She informs Saru and the Disco that she is now able to make the voyage into the future. But Spock will not be able to follow. His shuttle's engines were damaged when he was struck by a stray torpedo. The two siblings are forced to say goodbye. Burnham tells Spock to find someone else in life who can help him balance his humanity with his Vulcan side. Spock tells her that he loves her and is beamed to the Enterprise. Burnham takes flight with the Red Angel wings spread wide and creates the sixth red burst of the season. Discovery locks onto the signal and follows her into a new wormhole. In the Spore Room, Leyland is still working on the Spore Cube door, but his efforts are in vain. Giorgio magnetizes the cube, ripping the nanobots out of Leyland. The diabolical Giorgio laughs gleefully to her enemy's screams. Control is neutralized, and for reasons that may not be clear, the Discovery continues into the wormhole anyways. The coalition of the Enterprise, Klingons, Kelpians, and Poe watch as Burnham and the Discovery cross over and vanish as the wormhole collapses. Back on Earth at Starfleet HQ, Tyler, Pike, Number One, and Spock are debriefed. Each gets grilled by a Starfleet high and mighty uppity-up. They report that they saw the Discovery destroyed, keeping the ship's actual fate secret. In order to ensure a scenario like this never happens again, Spock recommends that Starfleet classifies all knowledge of the Discovery personnel and the Spore Drive. Even Amanda and Acerik swear to never speak of Michael again. Tyler is placed in charge of Section 31, and the Enterprise battle damage is repaired in dry dock. After months of waiting, the Enterprise detects the seventh and final red burst. Captain Pike and the Enterprise crew take off at warp to continue to seek out new life and explore new worlds, now knowing that their Starfleet brothers and sisters on the Discovery reached their destination a millennium in the future. The end. Until next season.
I got a time travel question.
What's up?
All right. This is one of those sort of, what do you call it, open loop or closed loop sort of things. If, where did the initial notion of, say, getting the Kelpians as an army come from? She knows to do it now because she did it in the future. But at some point she had to have the idea for the first time, right?
Yeah. Well, it was... this particular version...
What do you got, Anna?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
But no, she mentioned, or rather, her mom mentioned several episodes prior that she is the one who put the sphere in front of them, which awoke Saru. So she had that information. So she, I guess, there was never a point where she had to learn it from someone, or rather from herself.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, but what am I trying to say?
The sphere was all past info, right?
They went to
You
Kaminar.
get what I'm saying, I assume.
Yeah.
They went to Kaminar because a red burst appeared.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And even though Saru had encountered the sphere and went through Kelpian puberty and his gangula fell off, they didn't go to Kaminar until there was a red burst there, which we found out that actually wasn't Mama Burnham, it was Michael Burnham.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, we never actually see the inception of that idea. This is something that Doctor.
I guess arguably any one of the incidents, not just the Kelpians. I wondered quite where the impetus came from, other than knowing that it's to come.
This is something that Doctor Who does a lot. In modern Doctor Who, they've done this several times. The super famous episode Blink.
Yeah.
Where there's a script that is handed to the Doctor at the very end that he uses to set up everything that happened in the episode. Yeah. Or if you just go on YouTube and you type in Doctor Who Grandfather Paradox, you can watch this really cool video of Peter Capaldi, the greatest modern Doctor, explaining this stuff with uses Beethoven's Fifth as an example, but you'll check that out. I'll put a link to that actually because it's like a really cool moment with my favorite Doctor from Doctor Who. But yeah, I don't really like this trope because if you think about it too hard, it falls apart.
Well, it's a very old time travel trope in sci-fi that has been used in Star Trek before, I believe, and certainly has been used in lots of other shows. And they do actually attribute, Mama Burnham says time has a will. So if you want to say, and in Doctor Who, the novels, they flat out say, yeah, where do these paradoxical ideas and songs, like, oh, I wrote this song, but the reason I wrote it was because my future me came back and gave me the song, so I wrote it. So who wrote the song in the first place?
Right.
In the Doctor Who novels, they actually just flat out say it's an entity called Time itself wrote those books, created those ideas,
fate, and that kind of stuff.
They kind of seem to be hinting at this in this episode, in Discovery, where Mama Burnham says time has this will and time has this intention, and that also fits with what Spock said about time in the 2009 Star Trek as well, that there seems to be a destiny and a plan for
more connections to 2009 Trek.
So I don't know whether I like my Star Trek. I liked it in Doctor Who. I don't know if I want that idea being repeated in Star Trek.
Doctor Who is a slightly more poetic kind of science fiction, and Trek is harder, not hard sci-fi, obviously. But
Doctor Who is more whimsical, and time is treated as almost like a magical thing.
Yeah, I don't mind them introducing a time deity in Doctor Who. I'm not sure I want a time deity in my Star Trek.
Yeah, I know I don't, but I think that the writers of the show don't want us to think of this that hard and poke at it that much.
Right. Well, I was also like, why didn't Burnham, like, she could have, like, if she has all of time at her, and I guess she maybe can only make X number of trips or whatever, but, like, she could have, like, gone and, like, why not rally another space fleet to come help them, or...
That's one of the plot holes I want to point out, is that they make a very big deal last week that the time crystal can do one-way trip. She can go to the future, and that's it. But no, she goes to 5 different points in time in the past, is then still able to make her big trip to the future, and after that, she's able to send a red burst back in time.
I do wonder where that 7th red burst came from. That one I don't know. I just figured, time travel into the past isn't that big a deal. It's taking something into the future that requires this fancy gadget from Poe.
If you went chronologically backwards, so that you're like a little farther backwards as she plants the various seeds, and then only does one big leap forward, maybe...
Yeah.
But then she can still send a red burst back.
Yeah, I don't know where that's... But that is something of a mystery.
Something she got more in the future. She looked around and somebody had left some time crystals around for her.
It feels like instead of saying this time crystal can only do one trip, it's like, this time crystal will do everything the writers want it to do, and then it'll break down.
Well, they did establish that if you have a working time crystal and a powered-up suit... Well, I guess they said the suit was going to burn out, though, right? They said once she got to the future...
It was the crystal that's going to burn out because of their process of fast charging it with Poe's dilithium incubator.
Yeah, so once they got to the future, they wouldn't have a time machine anymore.
To be fair...
Except they still send a red burst back.
Mind you... How long did it take to get that red burst back? Maybe they went to Boreth, dug up another crystal, got the suit working.
Yeah, they do hypothetically have lots to work with.
They could have spent years getting that 7th burst ready.
That would definitely not have been exciting screen time, which is, I know, their primary concern.
Yeah.
But it would have been exciting to see anything with the Discovery at the end of the episode.
I think that was the whole point, was just to kind of mess with our heads and say, no, you don't get to know. Tune in next season. And I was like... All right, it annoys me, but it annoys me in a way that I really want to see next season, so mission accomplished.
Did anybody else feel like it felt like it could have been like a stealth finale to the series?
Yeah. The whole time I was watching it, I thought that it felt like really fine.
I mean, they've announced season 3, right?
Yeah, they have. So, like, obviously,
and yet there was so many goodbyes, and then they so passed the baton to the Enterprise that the outro music was the TOS music.
Well, they ended season 1 like that too.
Yeah, I will say this: the way they wrap up all of the why does nobody talk about Spocks Sister and why does nobody talk about Spore Drive. All of that becomes a problem if Discovery comes back. This might have been the show saying goodbye permanently to the 23rd century.
If I didn't know that this show was renewed for season 3, and I watched this episode, My assumption would be that it's now going to be a Pike and Spock and Number One Enterprise show, based on how it ended
like that,
with those characters. It felt like the Discovery crew were gone, and the story would continue on the Enterprise. I know that that's not the case. I know that Alex Kurtzman even came out today, the day of recording, and said in I believe it was a Hollywood Reporter interview. I'll provide a link to that. But he said that, like, yeah, we're going to do season 3 of Discovery. It's going to be those characters set 1,000 years further in the future.
Oh, they've said that.
Oh,
yes.
awesome.
That's so weird. I can't even guess what that would look like, so it's maybe weird to try and formulate any strong opinion on it, but it feels like that far out, it won't quite feel like Trek because it'll be crazy wildland territory.
It'll feel like what
could be
Voyager should have been.
Maybe so. I do like the sort of the comfort food, I guess, of like the trappings of warp engines, and like if people are like, well, now we just use nanotechnology, and if we want to do something, we change the shape of our body, and like I almost feel like if you're not doing that, something that wild, then why set it in 1,000 years in the future? And if you are, will I be able to relate to it?
I feel like it's a Kobayashi Maru. I feel like it's a no-win scenario, because you either have to create like a crazy, super advanced future. And you're going to have to do stuff with Picard to make it look more advanced than Discovery. After they added all this weird stuff in Discovery that doesn't really belong in the 23rd century.
Well, which is what I was going to say, is like, I think that putting the Discovery in the future is the natural progression of the show. Mm-hmm. I think that there is no, like, in this time period threat that they can throw at the Discovery, because the spore drive is so, like, advanced that, like, it was getting really annoying throughout this season, like, oh, Stamets has a headache and he can't jump, or somebody forgot to put the keys in the spore drive.
Right.
Like they need to have more futuristic threats for the Discovery. There needs to be more that can actually threaten
if it's
them.
one ship all by itself without a fleet to support it, that becomes a lot more desperate,
That's
even with those toys.
I was going to say is that you either have to create like a super insane advanced future to make it feel 1,000 years further ahead than what we're used to in Star Trek, or you can do like actually things aren't that great 1,000 years in the future. And
Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda.
Yeah, and I would hate that, because I don't want to see like, oh yeah, like the Federation actually doesn't work out. It's all going to collapse. I hate that so much. I hate that idea. I don't want that in Star Trek.
I have to admit, 1,000 years is a bit much to expect any government to sustain. I mean, it's not impossible, but
It's not impossible according to the history that we have known. But in 1,000 years, who knows?
Well, to get upset with them from making the Federation unreal, longer lived than we would necessarily expect is perhaps an unfair criticism.
And see, here's my other problem, is a lot of people were always freaking out from day one on the show about, like, oh, why does the Discovery have the spore drive that's never talked about? Why did Spock never mention his sister? I didn't need that explained. I feel like you could create a reason in the show why the spore drive doesn't work anymore. Like the spore, the mycelial aliens, maybe like they close themselves off from our universe for some reason. It's easy to write something like that.
It would be a good idea, honestly, for them to do that.
The idea of Spock having to have a rule never to talk about his sister, I hate that. It's so unnecessary and feels like so manufactured.
I guess
it does.
I didn't necessarily. I thought it was. I don't need that, but whatever. But so many people have complained about it that I was like, all right, this is in here for all those other fans who can't just grow up.
Also, like, I mean, I have a sister too, and I recently have gotten on a much better relationship with her, but I don't talk about her all the time. I don't bring her up unless someone asks, like, is it really that far-fetched?
I've watched several podcasts with you, and you've never mentioned your sister before at all. I don't believe you have a sister. Yeah, there's a retcon.
Exactly.
Check out this example. This is how I make this argument. Is that the TOS season 1 episode Operation Annihilate? We find out that Captain Kirk has a brother, George Kirk. He actually dies in that episode, and he is never mentioned again. Now, let's say that Operation Annihilate didn't happen. Let's say that episode never took place. And then, years later, someone wants to do like a prequel story, Operation Annihilate, and Kirk has a brother on this colony. You'd have people being like, no, Kirk can't have a brother. He never mentions having a brother before. He even like implies in Star Trek V that like he thinks a Spock is his brother that he lost, and so it's like crazy to like shoehorn a brother that he never had into the timeline. And like no, it's just like he doesn't mention it because
it's actually pretty easy for me to assume that a lot of conversations take place off camera when you do prequel stuff that introduces new elements, as long as you're just not constantly doing it. If it was happening all the time, it would become obnoxious. But I never had an issue with, like, it wasn't one of my concerns about Burnham was, that she hadn't been mentioned previously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just had so many questions about, like, we didn't see Burnham's mom again. We still don't understand, like, why did Burnham hear her mom die? I thought they would explain that in the season. Maybe they'll explain it in season 3. I hope that they just don't, like, forget
like
about
when
it.
she was hiding in the closet or whatever? Yeah.
Well,
because they mentioned that in season 2. Like, they bring that up. Michael's like, no, I heard her die.
did she, like, scream or make a gurgling noise or something? Like, what was the actual death
Maybe the
sound?
sound of taking off in the Red Angel sounds like someone dying.
I mean, like, when Michael got in the suit and did the first jump, like, she looked like she was gonna shit bricks. Like, she was just screaming her fucking head off. So, like, I would probably think someone was dying if that was all I heard.
I mean, maybe that's what it is, and they were just like, we're not going to state this, but, fans on message boards, somebody will eventually figure it out and just say it, and then they'll all get it.
I have to admit, just like I don't really care if about the whole Spock never mentioned his sister, I don't really care about the Michael Burnham claims she heard her mom die. I can let both of those go.
Well, it was like very specific.
I didn't need an explanation for either of those.
It was kind of specific what she implies when she said, yeah, they killed my dad, they took longer with my mom.
It didn't feel like they were setting something
right,
up.
It's almost more like they just changed their notion of what they wanted to have occurred.
I mean...
And that's all, and then they soft rebooted that one scene.
I have felt like that a lot with season 2 of the show, was that, like, a lot of the darker elements of the show, they've walked them back. And I don't know if it was in direct response to fan criticisms, but, like, if I'm talking about, like, the level of darkness that I want in Star Trek, implied, like, gang rape is not one of them.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
Like, if there is something to walk back, it's that.
Yeah, I'm completely with you.
Yeah, and I can see how someone might think, like, yeah, that's too icky to be in Star Trek, but I don't like just, like, ignoring stuff like that and acting like it didn't happen.
You're a Jeff Johns guy,
that's
DC superhero guy, who would like it explained with a storyline.
Well, I don't need them to, like, if you don't like that, just stop mentioning it, but don't completely contradict it. To me, fair. Like, that's sloppy writing, when you're like, yeah, we'll just change the past whenever it suits our purposes.
I mean, I do think that we have pointed out in the past, there's some sloppy writing in Discovery. It does happen.
And again,
I like the show, but it's got a few recurring weak spots, and sometimes that's minor plot points, sometimes unearned emotional payoffs.
And I want to get into some positive stuff on the show,
sure.
and ask y'all what y'all liked in this episode, but I got one last, like, major big bitch to get out of the way.
Okay.
Before I can talk about, like, the stuff I like and what y'all like.
Unleash it.
Control. I don't like Control as a villain. We never find out what Control's motivation is. Apparently he just wants to kill organic life, because we're meant to think that's what, like, evil, super intelligent computers do. They just want to wipe out all life for some reason. It's like, that's a trope we see so much that, like, to me, like, it feels like the writers just, like, expect us to go along with it. Mm-hmm. Also, like, the origins of Control. Did the Red Angel create Control by causing that time tsunami over Kaminar, where the probe went into the future and then came back and corrupted Arium? Like, what was the origin of Control going rogue? That's never really explained either.
I assume Control going rogue was kind of like Skynet. It just got a little too big and a little too smart and started making its own decisions. And I mean, we have this computer. How do we keep it? It's really powerful. How do we keep it from, like, doing bad things? Oh, don't worry. We've given it a bunch of rules. We've also given it all the Section 31 ethics codes. Oh, so I can ignore whatever rule I want as long as it achieves my prime directive.
I mean, I feel like
I can easily believe that something like that happened.
Thematically, I feel like Section 31's their the manipulative hubris created a computer that wanted to build itself up into this super hypersentient fascist destructive computer.
Then if that's the story they wanted to tell, they should have told that story instead of creating this weird time travel probe that comes back in time. Like, apparently Control becomes like this big bad in the future and is able to send that probe back. Sounds like it shouldn't have sent the fucking probe back, and it could have turned into like that big evil big bad anyways.
It's time travel weirdness.
Maybe they'll discuss it in season 3.
I don't think they will.
I don't think they will. I have to admit, I'm kind of... unless neutralized doesn't mean dead.
Well, she says Leyland is dead, control is neutralized.
Unless, if they have a little bit of control left on the ship that still potentially could wake up, then maybe we will learn more about control.
But I'd like to talk about some of the positive stuff in this episode. The visual spectacle of this episode was pretty impressive. What do y'all think of the battle and the graphics?
There's this one scene where they're the disco's getting hammered on all sides, and the Enterprise does this thing where they go and body block them, and they just take everything.
Yeah, it's like they
I
set
thought
up
that
a
was
pick.
one of the coolest visuals in the entire episode.
You know,
I was completely in love with that.
Yeah.
Those ships got so wrecked by the end of it that they looked like Marv from Sin City at the end of Sin City.
But it did feel a little too Battlestar Galactica-ish for me. But
Battlestar Galactica introduced that sort of, in a big way, that cinema verite style of as if a handheld camera was trying to track it, and there's lots of things that move by too quick and they blur, and there's lens flare and all that.
and the zoom in. And...
It does look cool. I there's a lot of stuff in it. I liked it, especially when the Klingon Cleave ship, which is a cool name, came in and wrecked that shit because it's giant. But small fighters fighting and moving in that kind of in the hundreds feels like more of a Star Wars thing than a Star Trek thing to me. So that was a minor issue.
So the only way I can explain that is we know under Pike's tenure, the Enterprise holds a crew of 200 people, and later under Kirk, it holds 400 people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe the reason why that holds extra 200 people a few years later is because they downsized their shuttle bay. It is ridiculous for these two ships to have 200 shuttlecraft between them.
I kind of like that somewhat ridiculous explanation because what they are. We did talk about how earlier in the season they had the drones that they had to fight to get to the Section 31 base, and it seemed like drones have been coming up sort of thematically. Drones are a kind of creepy thing in our real world. So the notion that they might replace that with essentially human intelligence and stuff, I kind of like as a thematic through line.
Well, didn't number one mention she loaded the ship up before coming out
Yeah.
here? So that can explain a lot of our ridiculous number of fighter shuttle pod things.
But I know you've seen the blueprints to that ship. You're not putting 200 shuttlecraft in there.
Was it shuttlecraft that they had
Discovery is built in such a way that she could carry a lot of shuttles. I don't know if they've stated the number, but there's certainly the potential there for a lot of shuttles in Discovery, just given the way she's she's built that same design of starship has been used as a shuttle carrier in fan blueprints based off the old Star Trek Phase 2 design.
Actual shuttle carrier?
The actual
Was this
shuttle
some
carrier.
weird inside tip of the hat to the RPG of the 80s?
I don't know. I don't think it was in the RPGs, but it was the original phase.
Oh, right.
The Phase 2 design for the Enterprise that was originally drawn up was a big was basically Discovery.
The Ralph McQuarrie.
Yeah.
Was that for Phase 2 or was it for Planet of the Titans?
One or the other. It all kind of blurs together, that pre-motion picture stuff. But fandom
no one
took
cares
that
what we're talking about right now.
I was going to say, we're on a Star Trek podcast, but you guys are fucking nerds.
One thing I wanted to say about the big battle stuff is that the sort of breathless vibe of a battle, I thought that they really captured well. There was a lot of quick camera movements inside, people running down halls, destruction, but there was also kind of that can-do panicked attitude. My favorite moment was Pike's very succinct something. What would he say? We're Starfleet, get it done.
Yeah. Quoting Captain Jellicoe.
Whoa, is it?
That was
I always
kind of
like Jellicoe.
That was Jellicoe's catchfraise in Chain of Command.
But he said it more like a jerk, though. More like
so Jellicoe was quoting Pike. Yes, interesting. I like that.
I would have rather Pike quote Larry the Cable Guy. Just be like, "Get her done."
Jesus Christ!
They did make him out to be kind of southern, didn't they?
I would like that to be stricken from the record if we're gonna strike things from the record.
As far as the big episode long battle, what I liked was I mentioned this last time that they've spent this whole season setting up all the dominoes, and then we get an hour and 5 minutes, was it, to watch them all fall down all at once, and it was glorious.
Yeah, special effects were for sure through the roof.
I love that long tracking shot of when Burnham jumps out of the shuttle bay and she's flying, and you have all those ships trying to support her and protect her, and she's following Spock.
That's
that
their
was
space.
So cool.
Their space Scorsese shot.
And you like, I get like this big smile on my face right now just thinking about it. But I know I was smiling like this watching it. That when she like is coming over like the Enterprise saucer.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that was so cool.
That was an amazing shot.
I love the Matt Jeffries Enterprise so much. It's like one of my favorite starship designs ever of all time. And this version of the Enterprise is so faithful to that. It looks so beautiful from so many different angles, and I love them using these creative techniques to photograph it in new ways I haven't seen before. I've never seen like a person flying through space, like their perspective on the ship. It looked so cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost borderline superhero stuff, but they've been setting it up for a long time with that suit.
And yet we've got the beams and sound effects from the old 60s Star Trek in the middle of all of this new fancy way of doing things.
The sustained beams, they weren't pulses. The phasers were like a sustained blue beam.
Yeah.
You know, that's a thing for me. I love
that.
I
was like, oh!
I like beams over bolts, and I like the capital ships that act like capital ships and kind of just move around in a big way while fires fly around like maniacs.
Your favorite movie of the Wrath of Khan is the one that introduced the bolts, though.
Yeah. Well, you know. But, you know, when they're, like, shearing the side of the ship in it, it felt more like a beam to me. Like it was acting like a beam. You know, making a sustained burn.
But it was pulsing.
Yeah, okay.
But,
alright.
Also,
yeah.
Speaking of superhero things, I really liked that, like, Iron Man interface that they put over Burnham's head while they were doing a lot of that stuff.
Like the heads-up display
Yeah, like,
stuff?
yeah, exactly.
When she actually goes into the wormhole, I thought the effects were great. It was
it was amazing.
It was very 2001 imaginative. It didn't look like anything we'd really quite seen before. Off mic earlier, we were talking about Interstellar, the Nolan movie, and like I felt like it had some of the same imaginative of visual design that did too.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is the director, Olatunde Osunsanmi. I'm always nervous I'm saying his name wrong, but he's like the head director of Discovery. And I can see why he wanted to direct these last two episodes, and I'm sure he was having tons of fun with that, because this show does have such a big budget. I would say too big when they're adding CGI repair droids that come out of the Enterprise. And
the little adorable...
They look so odd.
They did. Yeah. You know what? I noticed...
Like Pixar robots.
When they popped out, there was one of those classic Trek sound effects of like one of those switches activating, or whatever, like the bridge sound effect, and that was neat. And then a bunch of dumb little baby cute Wall-E robots shot out.
Yeah, exactly.
I was fine with the robots if they'd done something, but then we see them fix some things and then we cut away and they never amount to anything.
It doesn't even look like they're fixing anything. Like they're like shooting laser beams down at the hole at like areas that aren't even damaged.
Fix things.
They were
lasers can fix anything.
It's like a video game where like you click on like repair ship and there's like this little animation that's supposed to like represent the ship being repaired.
Star Trek's always done that. One.
No, it's like, okay, we fixed the holograms on the Enterprise.
We have seen their 3D printers actually shoot a beam that lays down material. That's probably what they are, is mobile 3D printers that are shooting fabrication beams down onto the hull.
It just seems awkward they made such a ceremony out of removing the holograms from the Enterprise just to add in like stupid robots that don't make sense.
They didn't have the stupid robots in the other... They could have been running around in other episodes. We don't get close-ups of the outer hull in 60s Star Trek.
Yeah, just because they didn't talk about the stupid robots doesn't mean
there was
they just weren't relevant.
Yeah, when Lucas does his refilm of it, they're going to be flying out the windows all the time.
Maybe if it was a cool idea, I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I think it's kind of lame.
Yeah. It's one of those doesn't quite feel like Trek kind of thing.
I feels like a really cool idea, but if the ship is firing its impulse engines, those little robots are going to probably go fly and be left behind. So,
but we did get some really cool shit with the Klingons in this episode. This is my favorite depictions of Klingons since season 4 of Enterprise, back in 2005.
They honestly felt like they were like I felt like I was kind of watching next gen era Klingons, and that I got pumped when they like all as one are like today is a good day to die. Yeah. It was like so say we all in the first Galactica.
L'Rell was so cool when she gets injured and she's like laughing. She's like, I thought my Chancellor ship would be bloodless and boring.
And did she say we're gonna like wade knee deep in their corpses or something?
Yeah.
Like she was so much what I want from a Klingon.
I'm actually like completely in love with her as a character, and I noticed that like Ash stayed in this time period, and I'm wondering if like we're not going to see more of their like I guess interpersonal stuff. there's obviously some problematic nature to it, given like the state of their like Ash Tyler's like dual personalities.
Sure.
How
But,
he
like-
like has like rape PTSD from
While simultaneously being like, oh yeah, the other half of me was like in love with you.
Yeah.
And
So,
I don't
like,
think they're going to address that, or they generally haven't in a very serious way.
Yeah. However, I would like to. I mean, I don't want to necessarily see them pick at it, but like the bit where L'Rell is like watching Ash on the bridge of the Cleve ship as he is watching Burnham jump through the wormhole, never to come back.
I was gonna bring that
like,
up,
I
yeah.
felt bad. I was
No.
like, this is like the worst love triangle ever because like the connecting pieces are all on fire.
I felt so sad. I felt so sad for L'Rell in that moment when when it has like a montage of everyone like staring at the Discovery going into the wormhole, and when Tyler's looking at it, it cuts to a flashback of him have his last kiss with Michael in the previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
And L'Rell is staring at Tyler like she knows what he's thinking, and her eyes look so sad because she's just like, he'll always love her and he'll never love me.
And it's also particularly bad because, like, in this moment, he's also the most Vogue he's been ever. Like, he's commanding the fleet, like, from the bridge of a Klingon ship, and he's, like, a huge badass. And honestly, I actually like Tyler more in these situations than in Section 31. And so, like, it must be particularly bittersweet to be like, yes, Vogue is standing beside me, but it's not
This
Vogue,
is the
it's
far-flung
Tyler.
future. Can they not work in some polyamory? Can they not try and make it work as a
You know,
triad?
That would
That's
get rid of
fair.
all the angst.
That's one of those many things that actually, way back when we were talking about, we'd like to see some sexual progressivism in Trek, that I'd like to see them potentially acknowledge. It obviously doesn't need to be a big part of the thing, but if they had those kind of casual relationships every once in a while,
Yeah.
I think it'd be kind of cool.
They
Well, it's-
dabbled with it with Phlox.
Yeah, I was gonna say they did an Enterprise, and it was surprisingly tasteful.
Yeah.
So...
What we're talking about, like with that Klingon sequence and how cool that was. I do have to say that there's a major plot hole there, and they made a very big deal that all the Klingons had to think Tyler was dead, and he couldn't set foot on Borath because even these weird monk Klingons can't see that he's alive. But here he's like on a ship with other Klingons just hanging out.
I mean, I think...
Are those like her specially chosen bridge crew, and everything else is like there's a CG version of him on monitors or something?
Alternatively, he just hopped in and was like, get in, losers, we're going to blow up some Federation shit, and they just completely forgot about it.
Oh, I can't say no to blowing up Federation shit.
Like, I don't want Klingons that would be like, oh, well, I'm loyal to L'Rell, even though she's like deceptive and like lied to the Empire. Like that's Romulan shit. Don't Romulan up my Klingons.
Yeah, well, I mean, they shouldn't have made such a big deal about Tyler not being able to be seen by Klingons if they were going to come up and do this ending.
Yeah.
I can totally see why we did this ending. We don't want Tyler to just say, oh, by the way, I called the Klingons, but I'm hiding in a crate. I'm hiding in L'Rell's bedroom on the Klingon ship so that then no one on the Klingon ship knows I'm here. That would be lame.
Especially
But they kind of shot themselves in the foot by setting all this stuff up at the front end of the season.
It's also weird that like 20 minutes into this battle, he had enough time to go all the way back to Klingons. Like his shuttle must have had a spore drive on it.
I just
to
assumed
go
he'd
that far.
already arranged all this and he was just picked up on the way. That the Klingons were had been on their way for since the same time that what they in the previous episode, part 1, Discovery spore jumps away, and then Enterprise takes off at warp. I assumed that was about the same time the Klingons took off at warp.
Out of curiosity, and I think you and I may be the most casual among this quartet here. Had you thought about that?
I thought about...
Yeah, are you like
Klingons
worrying about
get
the
there
travel
so fast?
times and everything? I don't think it even once occurred to me.
Yeah, it didn't really bother me
Just
at
curious.
all. Like, they did show up fashionably late anyway, so...
Right, but they showed up dramatically on time.
Yeah,
exactly.
They showed up for the Helm's Deep charge down with Gandalf.
I can see the Klingons are sitting out there. We need to make it badass. Not
That's
yet.
right.
Not yet. She says, L'Rell.
I would honestly
now.
I would kind of love that if they did.
Maximum coolness. There it is.
That's like a robot chicken gag where like they show you like the weird scene like that of what must have been going on. But
You're going to tell me the Klingons aren't melodramatic?
Yeah, there's a way you could do that scene you talked about and write it with a little bit of caution and nuance, and I think make it work. Yeah, where the Klingons are like, there's no honor in a battle easily won. Like this battle needs to grow and become what it will be, and we will know when it is time to strike.
We will feast on this banquet when it is ready.
Yes, exactly. It could be done.
What about early on when they're running down the corridors building the Red Angel suit?
Yep.
That was super cool. Super good way to show like Starfleet working together, doing the science.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I dug it. They created a real strong sense of momentum there.
There were a couple of bits that I actually didn't like about that. Like one of the ones, I love Stamets, and I feel like he didn't get to do anything except get his ass kicked by rocks, falling rocks.
He had some cool stuff in the building of the suit.
He did, but he was an asshole. Like get off the line, I'll take care of this kind of thing. And it is, but like I would have liked to see him, I don't know, be more likable. I felt like he was not a fixture in this season at all.
He and Tilly, I was going to say, both were a little bit pushed out by new characters, by Pike and Spock, etc.
Yeah.
In Reno.
Tilly, but she was also kind of pushed off the screen.
Tilly took a back seat the latter half of the season. I don't know if it's because Mary Wiseman, I know, was also getting married earlier this year, and I don't know if she was busy with that.
More like married Wiseman.
Wow.
Sure.
You're very clever, Dave.
He's a wise man.
I'm still in mourning that she's
wise guy. You mean?
That's fair.
But they did have Tilly do like the one little cool thing, repairing the shields, because it needed. They said that the Discovery couldn't survive the wormhole without shields. So
right.
they did throw her one bone.
Everybody got to do something. Well, I wanted to quick mention that I thought the music, which was one of those things that I kind of have always wanted to like be pushed a little bit more into that dramatic original series level of music where it's like it plays a big role, and I thought there was some particularly good music in this episode. I think notably, I want to say it was let's see, the farewell to Sarek and Amanda. Go back and watch that. The music is particularly strong.
Last week.
Oh shit, I watched it back to back. All right, but this one too, because there was this episode had notably the reorchestration of the main Discovery theme and some TOS themes, including blending them together.
Mm-hmm.
I was just noticing that the music was definitely more potent in these last few episodes than I expected it to be.
I like Jeff Russo's score generally, but it doesn't always just like really stand out and just hit me as like, oh my god, that's great.
Right, the themes are still not quite the TOS level.
Sometimes it does hit me like that, and this episode was definitely like some of the best Discovery music ever. I particularly love like the Spock theme that they've used multiple times throughout the season, and they use it in here in kind of a sweet way when Spock's in his shuttle and Burnham's in the suit and they're making like their final goodbye to one another. By the way, how weird is it that Michael basically tells Spock like, yeah, go and find Kirk, like that real like. All the like the Kirk Spock shipping, all like the fanfic and the theories that like Spock and Kirk had like this gay romance going on, like that's
what do you mean theory?
or yeah, like
a lot of these conversations, it was just off camera.
You can make a pretty damn convincing argument that happened, and like with Burnham's speech about go and find that one person in the universe like that. I mean, like I was like Spock is gonna be like looking for Kirk,
his soulmate.
Yeah, looking for his soulmate.
Yeah, well, she didn't say look for someone to love. She said look for someone to balance you.
Oh, balance you.
And I really...
It's like a fortune cookie in bed, parenthetically afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
As much as I loved those exchanges, and I thought they were so well written and acted, this does to me kind of mess up the Spock arc that's already been established, where he's the very cold, very Vulcan, embarrassed to show any emotion in the original series, and then as we get to know him more and more, and in the TOS movies, he does start to embrace his human side a little bit. And I think this kind of undercuts that arc by showing him...
It's like it happened earlier, and then he forgot it again. Which, to be fair,
he
people
didn't forget it. He lost his sister.
Yeah, exactly.
And he said, fuck emotions.
That's what I was telling myself. That was what I was putting in my headcanon, filing away.
Just like Spock in Star Trek Into Darkness, where he's all kind of like, just kind of had it with life after losing his mom in Star Trek 09. You know, I was like, yeah, this is probably going to hit him really hard.
I think psychologically you can make a decent case for it, but I feel where you're coming from.
I mean, he's not going to tell... He's not going to tell her right now, no, losing you is so painful, I'm never going to go through this again. I'm not going to find that other person. No, he's going to keep his mouth shut and let her feel like she's making a difference, even if he's already decided, yeah, I'm not doing this. But so.
We got a lot of Reno in the back half of this season.
Reno had the best laugh out live. Sorry, sir, or whatever, after she...
Get off my ass.
Oh,
sir.
yeah.
Sir, yeah.
I didn't like that. I thought that was too, like, you wouldn't say that to your captain.
Reno would. Jet Reno would.
She would, though.
I don't know.
Nobody else would, but Jet Reno absolutely would.
She ran out of fucks to give a long time ago.
Well, she technically, I think, never had to build them up on the disco. She was not...
That's fair.
She arrived all out of fucks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like,
war will do that to you.
She tore them apart to keep her crew on life for a long time ago.
That's right.
No more
She
fucks.
built a bunch of fuck equipment, so to speak.
What exactly did Reno have to do charging the time crystal? We just see her like in that room watching she's watching a phone charge. She's like, oh, it's at 98% now. Need another minute.
Well, last episode they said she had to bring down the shield, which was going to give her the hallucinogenic visions, but she apparently had to modulate something and keep you couldn't just walk away from it.
I would have liked a little technobabble explaining why someone needed to be in the room with her.
I thought they kind of covered that last episode.
If you go back and watch that episode, they don't. They just say like, drop the cage. They call it the cage around the crystal. Yeah. It'll give you like weird trippy visions.
Somebody needed to be in the room to like regulate it when it ended so they didn't destroy the crystal.
You can't do that remotely from like the other end of the ship?
There's a lot of remote things that could have been done remotely in various Star Treks that they don't. But yeah, I think it is a slight weak point that like they had to have.
They could have brought in a cutesy, stupid robot to upset you all, and the cutesy, stupid robot could have regulated things.
Yeah, we could have had Eve from WALL-E take care of that too. I mean, the reason why it bothers me is because they made a big deal that she was a big piece of the puzzle. We had to have a red burst to go and recruit Reno so that she could like sit in this room, have like flash forward to the future, and watch like a charge meter go up to 100%.
Nobody else had lost enough fucks to be able to sit in that room for that long.
She was, I think, uniquely equipped mentally to deal with the stress of getting all these fucked up visions of the future. Like, she lived all those fucked up visions.
I think that's maybe the best overall notion is that you had to get somebody who was really hardened and experienced and had like even like PTSD shell shock kind of
She has seen the future. She saw the original series. She saw all the movies. She saw Next Gen and Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and she knows what happens in the Picard series.
The idea.
She's like Spock, you're going to get really old, and then you're going to go back in time and just like change history to this like really, really weird stuff where Kirk steals a car and he's a little kid.
I mean, if they did have her like say that line at some point, I don't think it would have felt out of character at all.
I'm glad she's still on the ship. I'm glad that she will be part of the crew, it seems, in season 3.
Yeah.
She's I don't think I've made it any secret, but she's like my favorite character on the show.
Yeah.
I'm super stoked.
She's one of my favorites. There's just like a couple stuff in here that fell a little flat for me. I'm a cat, I got 5 lives left.
That was great too.
Yeah,
I love that.
I don't know. I thought that was kind of lame. I was like, you're funnier than that, Reno. Come on.
Some of her lines do feel like, come on, you're a comedian, you're better than this.
Yeah, let Tig Notaro write her own jokes.
Yeah.
For stuff like that.
I've never seen her perform, but I loved her jokes in this episode.
She's grew up in Houston, by the way, so Texas shout out.
Oh, nice.
So not only does it look like Reno will still be on the crew in season 3, but also Giorgio is still on the ship.
Yeah.
That's weird. How does that fit the Section 31 plan?
Yeah, maybe she just noped out like she has been doing all along.
Maybe.
Just like at the last second.
Well, Michelle Yeoh sounds really excited about the show in interviews and stuff. And she says,
about Disco or Section 31?
About Section 31.
Okay.
But they have said previously, they said the Section 31 show won't come out until after Season 3 of Discovery. And now it's pretty obvious why. I don't know if that means the entire Discovery crew will eventually come back, or maybe she'll come back by herself somehow.
Yeah, I mean, there's time travel wackiness all abounding, so she could do that at some point, just on her own.
I really don't know if the Discovery crew I mean, as cheesy as I think some people probably felt like the ending to this season was, I think it's going to be so much worse if the entire Disco crew comes back to this timeline.
Well, what Alex Kurtzman said, and again, I'll have a link to the interview. He said that, we feel like we'll have a lot more freedom, writing the show now with it being set in the future instead of it being set in the past of other Star Trek shows. Mm-hmm. So, to me, I take that as like, it's just going to be so much easier if we can just have this show move to this time period and not come back.
There's that problem with science fiction that when the present catches up with it, everything looks, you're like, that didn't happen. And Trek's got a bit of that. We're supposed to be in the middle of the eugenics wars or whatever, right?
No, the eugenics wars happened in the 90s.
Wait.
We're supposed to be post-eugenics wars.
Yes.
Right.
World War III is going to happen in a few decades.
Yeah, my point is that we've hit the point of problematic stuff.
But
you throw stuff 1,000 years out there, you get a long time to make these shows and for it to not feel awkward when it doesn't happen.
And Greg Cox wrote a pretty cool book about how the eugenics wars did happen in the 90s, and it was all kept secret.
And I think that's kind of a cool idea to sort of make some of that stuff work. But yeah, now people with 1,000 years in the future will have to be like, oh, we don't have talking starships like the one in that short.
Now, I was kind of whatever about the let's make a Captain Pike TV series that all the fans are going on about.
Yep.
Now that Discovery's lost in the future and might stay there for a few seasons potentially, the Captain Pike TV series sounds far more workable and useful and functional of an idea.
Well, they devoted the last 5 or 10 minutes of this to kind of get. It was as if they were like, "This is happening. Get hyped." And the bridge of the Enterprise looks awesome.
That's not how it was intended.
I know it just came off that way.
Yes.
Though.
I think the only things really left that we haven't touched on, unless any of y'all have anything to bring up, is we did see the death of Admiral Cornwell in this episode.
Thoughts?
Thought it was lame. Why couldn't they just get a little grabby arm to press the thing?
See, why couldn't the little baby droids carry?
Yeah,
the
exactly.
stupid robot.
That was my question when that happened. Is this the first dud photon torpedo we've seen? I mean, maybe it was some kind of super...
That happened on DS9, that happened on Voyager.
I remember the Voyager one.
This is the third time I've seen that.
Yeah.
And that's not even a photon torpedo. That's like the...
Didn't they say a photon torpedo?
That's what they said, but that's not what it was. Photon torpedoes glow. There's there's all those blue things shooting around.
I assumed it was one of the being ultra nerd here, I assumed it was one of the high-yield photon torpedoes that were mentioned and occasionally seen in the 24th century, and that they're slow and easy to shoot down, but if the Discovery shields are down and there's such a mess, Section 31 said, sure, we'll try high-yield, and they aren't usually used in ship-to-ship combat, and we see why. They don't go off properly.
It looked more like the big-ass torpedoes they have in the Star Trek Into Darkness that you can hide a frozen person inside of.
It was way bigger than that. That thing was the size of bigger than a shuttlecraft.
Yeah, but like it was unusually big for a torpedo.
Yes,
I just figured it was a Section 31 fancy crazy torpedo.
But none of their other torpedoes look like that. Most of their torpedoes are glowing blue things.
Well, that's because they save up their super torpedoes for when it's dramatically appropriate.
One of the
and the super torpedo can't even go off the right time.
That's why they aren't used in spaceship combat, because high-yield torps aren't that reliable.
I did feel it was kind of a weak scene, too. I like Cornwell. I don't mind that she got killed, but it felt like a sort of contrived scene so that she could kind of go out with a redemption scene.
I mean, I felt like, much like with Arian, they wanted me to feel things for a character that they didn't deserve me feeling things for. I didn't care that she sacrificed herself, because, I didn't know who she was. The only, real humanizing moment I think she has... I mean, I guess there's
She's been back in a lot of Pike's plays in this season.
Yeah, but we saw her a lot in season 1.
That's smart, not necessarily, I don't know.
Well, she also tried to get Stamets and Culber back together like everybody else did.
But that was really actually weird for me, because he was like, I feel really conflicted and bad about this, and she's like, it's my expert opinion as a therapist that fuck you and do it.
She also, she also coached Tyler when he was having a PTSD breakdown in Klingon prison. Yeah. She like help coached him through that.
And that's like the one moment that I can think of where I was like, okay, she's
when
like
her
cool.
back was
and I
broken.
like her.
Like her back was broken and she was like paralyzed from the waist down, and she was like still like keeping her shit together and trying to lead.
I think
But then she
tried
was
to be a
like,
leader.
genocide is a cool idea.
Yes, and that's why I'm glad the character died, because I wanted her. I wanted her to be punished for that.
No, see, I don't think this is what they intended, but for me, this is her way of atoning for all of the sins she has committed.
Right.
In my head canon is that's why she said, no, it's got to be me. I got to do this, is because of all the sins she committed in season 1.
Everybody, like, the
and
best
her
example...
own part in facilitating Control's existence. As an admiral, she's kind of supposed to keep control of things like that, and clearly she didn't.
And not lose control to Control.
Yes.
And she also was telling Pike a few episodes ago about this is why we wanted to keep you out of the war, because we knew like you were the perfect example of what we should be, and you know, like I'm paraphrasing, but it makes sense that
she knows she's more compromised than he is.
Yeah, like this guy is more valuable than I am. Like the universe needs him more than it needs me. Now, here's what I would have done in that situation. If I was in that room with the Admiral, she wouldn't have died. I would have saved her. Mm-hmm. Because I would.
There's no reason she had to die. Incidentally, that I can think.
I know, but like with the contrivance that they wrote, I would have been like, okay, Admiral, take off your clothes. No, wait, this isn't what you think. Just do it. And then I would take off my clothes, and I would tie our clothes together and make like a clothes rope, and wrap it around that handle, and we'd both go in the turbo lift, and you pull the handle, and you makes the blast shield come down, and then like we're safe in the turbo lift.
I don't know if you have that much time to tie all of your clothing
90
together.
seconds, I could do it.
Do you think you could?
I ran drills.
I don't know
he
why
gets naked and pulls levers with his pants all the time. So.
I don't know why they don't tie clothes together more often to fix Star Trek problems.
I'm just saying that seemed really obvious. I don't see how anyone could watch that scene and not think of that.
That is a super interesting point.
That is absolutely what I would have expected if Jet Reno had been the one trying to save the day. But
also, like, it'd be really cool if they could make the entire ship out of whatever the fuck that blast door is made out of.
That was the other thing that I was going to say is, like, why did that little dinky-ass door protect what would have blown up, like, most of the ship?
In Star Trek The Next Generation, they have established that the walls are reinforced with structural integrity fields that basically turn them into slabs of force field. So
you can minimize something that blows up inside the ship.
I could believe that if you had time to refocus it, you could make... Just for a second, it only needs to last a second, you could hyper boost that structural integrity field to the point where it's as strong as the external shields on the ship.
I'm being a little silly, but I was thinking that, like, they could have like some force field reinforcement in there, but that was kind of awkward to see the ship flying around with like big bite out of the saucer.
The one thing I thought was interesting was the split screen, 3 different screens of 3 different people talking. I was like, I don't think they've ever done that in Star Trek. Ever, have they?
I kind of liked it.
I didn't mind it. I thought it was fine, but I was like, have they ever done anything like that before?
No.
With Enterprise Orange bars breaking up the pictures?
It's up there with all their crazy upside down camera shots as they pan over ships.
You know what's weirder than doing that in an episode? It's doing that only one time in like the beginning and never doing it again. It would have been.
Were they doing it while everybody was running around?
They did it when Detmer was talking to Number One, and then like Saru comes into the conversation. But it was kind of stupid because it was Detmer explaining that. Okay, Burnham needs to be far enough away from the fleet, far enough away from the battle that she can like open the wormhole and like the drones can't get into it, but close enough to the Discovery that the Discovery can follow her into the wormhole. And the way that she says is like, like Burnham needs to reach like the coordinates at arc .004 or something like that. And Number One says in English, please.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that was weird because Number One's supposed to be super intelligent. The original series described her as like a human computer.
Which we know that they, as a meta or outside of continuity, we know that they mapped that onto Spock. But they hadn't established it in this, and I guess they haven't particularly shown it. She's clearly a hyper-competent first officer, but it did strike me as weird whether they intended her to be super smart or just smart and efficient. It seemed weird for her to be like, translate that to English, please.
I did have a closing thought for, I mean, I guess technically about the whole season really.
Mhm.
But
yeah.
I particularly, especially in this episode, noticed that a lot of big moments went to women. Like a lot of the characters who were important to the plot, and even like a lot of the characters, like if you looked at the bridge of the Enterprise or the bridge of the Discovery, like mostly women on the bridges of these starships, which I think is really cool, especially also considering the number of women who are actually working on the show in general. And I did want to say, after making fun of and talking a lot of shit about the show over the course of all my appearances on the podcast, that like I think it's awesome that is part of the show.
Yeah.
Like, it does really
That's just,
feel...
like, baked into it.
Yeah, like, it doesn't feel like they made a big deal of it. It's just, like, that's just part of the show.
I had a thematic thing I wanted to mention, which is that science versus faith thing, which, it occurred to me that the same complaint that I had earlier in the season, that it felt like it was a slightly facile way to approach it, and that they really didn't discuss it in any meaningful way where... You know, in the end, she tells Spock, like, oh, you're asking me to take a leap of faith. And he's like, you know, it's the only logical thing or something. And I'm like, that's not really that's not a discussion.
That's a paradox. You can't have faith and, like, have a logical reason to believe it at the same time. Like, those are opposite things. Like, faith is when you put your trust in something without having evidence for it.
Right. And I get that they wanted to show that Spock was... I think somewhat moved to have a moment of faith, you know, in a person, you know, that's how important his sister was to him. But what I did miss was the discussion and the kind of the depth that would have happened in you know, especially Next Generation. And the one I kept coming back to is the weaponizing of the Kelpians. Like, that happened, and like, yes, it was to help them out, but like, that changed their whole civilization, arguably to save the galaxy. But they never talked about it, never thought, oh, well, you know, did we do a disservice to them?
I mean, they were being eaten, so probably this is better than that.
I kind of want them to... It turned out that the new Kelpians start becoming a danger. They start becoming a problem because they're so aggressive. I think... I don't know how you do that with Discovery in the future, but I guess if we get our Pike show or our Section 31 show, if the Kelpians start turning into a bit of a problem...
The future is the perfect time to do it, because then you can say 1,000 years have passed.
And the Kelpians have ate everyone.
Yeah, they're going to come out and there's little Kelpian spikes in all these corpses and skeletons, and they find them and they're these skeletons with these pikes, and they're like, Saru! You know?
Oh yeah, like Saru arrives on the Discovery and they're like, oh, it's the legendary Saru, the liberator of our people.
First warrior.
Yes. Who set us on our course to wipe out all other life.
He's brought us a ship full of aliens to dine on.
That would be amazing.
Wait till season 3. I guess like my closing thoughts before we go into the Easter eggs would be like this episode had a bunch of stuff I loved, a bunch of stuff that made me roll my eyes. I honestly feel like it was trying too hard. And I mentioned the things where I said like I was dissatisfied with the answers we got. But a lot of the stuff that was written here, I give these writers a hard time during this podcast, but this was co-written by Michelle Paradise, going to be the new co-showrunner in Season 3. And based on the previous episode that she wrote, I think that she is very responsible for the more character-focused stuff in this episode and also in Part 1 last week. And I'm still very excited to see what she brings to the table in Season 3. And even though like Season 2 started out great for me, it developed a lot more imperfections in the second half of the season, I think, which is weird because it's after like the showrunners got fired and Alex Kurtzman kind of like took over more complete control. And I'm really hoping that we get a very stable season of Discovery with no crazy like showrunner changes or anything, because the last 2 seasons were a little chaotic as far as that stuff is concerned. And I think Season 2 was much more stable. I think that's probably why it was more... I think it was more coherent and better quality than Season 1, even though I had some issues with Season 2. I'm very optimistic for Season 3. And Michelle Paradise, I'm looking forward to see what she brings to the table. And that's... As for this episode, though, yeah, I do feel like it's kind of like trying too hard to be like this big, cool spectacle thing. Maybe tone it down with special effects. You don't need to add like weird little R2-D2s.
You know what's most exciting for me? Seeing Spock without the beard. I don't know if I had more or less complaints than you overall, but by ending it like with a very nostalgic nod, to be honest, with the Enterprise and Pike and Spock going back to the classic look and all that, I felt really very positive about it in those last few minutes. So,
There's a big Easter egg.
I don't know how much of that
there.
is just nostalgia, but it was cool to see it all realized with fancy effects and stuff.
And then there's a big Easter egg in there that we will get to momentarily, because we are going to transition into our Easter egg section, because this podcast is coming out on Easter Sunday. So,
wow.
So how cool is that?
Amazing.
So how many eggs can we find for Easter?
I was going to point out that Pike did say, get it done, like Jellicoe will say in The Next Generation.
Yep.
Also, another time, a quote in Discovery echoes something we've previously heard in Star Trek. When Burnham is asking Reno if she can hurry up on charging the time crystal, she says, violate the basic laws of physics? No. And that's something that... similar to what Scotty said in the original series episode, the naked time, or the
Naked Time.
I get them mixed up.
Naked Now is the TNG.
Yeah.
In the Naked Time, Scotty says, "I cannot change the laws of physics. I've got to have 30 minutes."
Yep.
Other callback to a previous quote in this episode is Saru and Giorgio quoting The Art of War.
Mm-hmm.
We heard Saru in the Prime Universe Giorgio talk about Art of War way back in the Vulcan Hello. Or no, it was in the Battle of the Binary Stars. The second episode.
Long ways ago.
Yeah, so all the way back at the beginning. But yeah, in this episode he says, be extremely subtle, even to the point of formlessness. Be extremely mysterious, even to the point of soundlessness. Thereby, you can be the director of the opponent's fate.
That completely described the battle we saw. Subtle.
Yeah, then the next Easter egg is the Enterprise with the sustained blue phaser beams, which was frequently used in the original series. In fact, in the original series remasters that they did a few years ago, where they updated the special effects, they changed all the Enterprise phasers to blue. But I think in the 60s version, there's sometimes red, sometimes green, I think. But the retcon is that it was all blue all the time, I guess. Mm-hmm. I do think it looks cooler when the phasers are blue.
I agree.
Next, we have Pike says that Burnham will need 2 minutes and 47 seconds to reach her destination. So
47.
They managed to shoehorn in another 47 before they closed out the season.
Yep, amazing.
Dave, did you catch that one?
No, I never do. I don't really listen to the numbers other than whatever the broad strokes are. Do they have an hour or do they have 5 minutes? That's all I care about.
Then when we have the Klingons show up and join the battle, we do get the famous Klingon quote, "Today is a good day to die." Mm-hmm. Also, the Star Trek Discovery makeup guy, Glenn Hendrick, is in charge of the makeup department. He appears as that really cool-looking Klingon on L'Orel's ship.
Oh.
He's credited as Cavort. And he is the best-looking Klingon the show has ever had.
Of course he would be.
So he made himself the best-looking Klingon. If you pause it and stare at him too long, it kind of gets worse the longer you look at
abyss.
it. Like the forehead looks really weird. Doesn't look like any Klingon we've seen before. But like the way that he had the beard and the hair and the eyebrows, it all looks super recognizable as a Klingon from the TNG DS9 era.
Right. But even that they're gonna add their Discovery flair to, so it's a Discovery version of a TNG DS9 era.
And then next we have the green blood on Spock's face when we see his face get scratched up in some of the battle action. So that's always cool to have the reminder that the Vulcans have green blood.
If McCoy's not here, I need to see it visually. If McCoy's not here to be racist.
A green-blooded hobgoblin.
Yeah.
Also, Tilly has to make those shield repairs. She goes into Jeffrey's tube. So, little callback to the Jeffrey's tube.
It's one of the most iconic places on the ship.
And is it just me? Did anyone catch number one's name? At one point, does Pike...
I saw that reading something online about it, but I had not noticed it until... I didn't notice it in the episode.
Wait, did they say her name? Because even in the deposition at the end, she was like, "My name is number one."
Yeah, Holly commented on that. Wow, she even goes by number one in the deposition.
But yeah, apparently they mentioned the Una one.
Did they say Una or Anna?
So the recap, I was quick skimming earlier. That I don't remember where it was from. It could have been Women at Warp. Could have been some other sci-fi themed place. But they spelled it out as Una.
Okay.
Which is like what she is. That how she's listed in the script.
That's in the books.
Yeah, it for sure
novels.
is.
Yeah.
But so he did name drop it, and I think the thing was that I was reading said they weren't sure whether it didn't clarify as like, is that itself a nickname, or is number 1 the nickname? I don't know.
Okay.
I'm assuming her actual first name isn't numbered.
I think Una is
A little silly.
It's silly. Like what is her name? Numera Una. It's goofy as hell.
I'm kind of fine with giving the novels a shout out. A little love for the novels.
Well, Control came from the novels. So.
Yeah. I mean,
we also have Burnham's goodbye speech, which strongly implies that Spock will one day find a friend or a possible boyfriend in Captain Kirk.
You got a friend in me.
And then I thought this was really cool because the motion picture doesn't get referenced that much, but
oh yes,
the wormhole effect. When Discovery goes in the wormhole, it looks like the wormhole effect we see on the Enterprise.
Some of that blurring thing.
in the motion picture.
I got so excited when I saw that. I'd forgotten about that. I was like, oh, look. I love that effect.
It is a cool effect. I should have... I liked it as an effect. I didn't like it for reminding me of the motion picture, though. That brought great sadness to my people.
It brought great happiness to mine. There was much rejoicing among my people.
Everyone loves the motion picture now. It's like
there has been a definite rethink in it, which when I rewatch it, I will go into it as open-minded as possible.
Yes, because we will be discussing that soon on Tex-Trek. More on that in a bit. Next Easter egg, we have Starfleet headquarters in San Francisco. Looked fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And we see the Golden Gate Bridge with all those solar panels on it, which I thought was cool.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
They
That's
probably
cool.
won't have solar panels like that in the future. We just figure oh yeah, those are old enough. Those are World War III era solar panels.
They should have had those little flying robots around it. That's how we know it's future.
Yeah, and then
It's happening with lasers and stuff.
Then shortly after we see Starfleet headquarters, we see dry dock in orbit where the Enterprise is being repaired. Looked a lot like the dry dock we see in the motion picture and in the Wrath of Khan.
Looked beautiful. The ship looked so cool there.
Mm-hmm.
Classic Enterprise.
And we had that same design, those I guess they're hexagon or octagon, those lights.
In the engines,
or they're those lights that are just floating in space, like shining light. Was crews are working on the ships and stuff.
Yeah.
There was a lot of the same design where they added a lot more detail, a lot more texture, but very similar designs as what was used in the motion picture. Andy Probert probably came up with originally.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have that moment of Spock on the Enterprise talking about kind of like a letter he's writing to Burnham. Explaining what all had happened and why for some reason they have to keep everything secret. I wasn't real clear on that either, but...
so that the people who are obsessed with continuity will shut up.
Yeah, I kind of felt like all of that was just to get the haters to shut up. And I was like, I guess we just have to endure this because we can't burn them, so we have to throw them a bone.
Spock says, to paraphrase an Earth physicist, the universe is under no obligation to make sense to me. Does anyone know who he is referring to?
I've heard it before, but I can't remember, and I literally watched this episode and
I'm going to say, let's see, Arthur C. Clarke's not a physicist.
I'm going to guess Carl Sagan.
I'm going to say Stephen Hawking.
Y'all are both wrong. It was Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Who has often mentioned that he's a Star Trek fan himself, so maybe he'll be thrilled to learn that Star Trek seems to be a fan of him.
But they didn't want to say his name. That's because we're still waiting to see if the sexual harassment thing is going to pan out.
I was going to say that.
If they do, they'll edit it back in. Yeah, they'll redub it.
Yeah.
As Neil deGrasse Tyson once said.
And then, of course, we have beardless Spock. As Dave mentioned, he loved that. I love that
so
too.
So smooth.
Even though Ethan Peck looks really weird without a beard now. Kind of threw me off a little bit.
I mean, that was the point. They already got to give him almost the Spock eyebrow.
And I didn't need number one and Pike to be oh my god, and just like wide-eyed and their jaws on the floor. I mean, like,
Yeah, they were so wide-eyed that I was like, oh, has he been wearing this beard since before he got crazy? Because I thought it was supposed to be a little bit of he let himself go because he kind of lost it a bit.
right? Yeah, I think they
But maybe he's been wearing it for years.
They overplayed that reaction, but it was cool to see him with his proper look, clean shaven, blue shirt, and at the science station
with the Starfleet points on his sideburns.
Yeah,
Yes.
and he had the recreation of the science station from the original series, which was super cool.
You gotta have the Viewmaster.
Had his viewer, and then like that weird like black and white blurry kind of like
the spinning things.
Yeah.
So that was cool to see all of that, and then the final shot is the camera pulling out of the bridge dome of the Enterprise that mirrors the opening shot of the original Star Trek pilot, The Cage, set on this ship with these characters, Pike, Spock, and Number One. And that episode begins with the camera zooming into the bridge dome.
Yeah, a weirdly ambitious shot of as if you're flying through the dome into the bridge.
Yeah.
It's kind of weirdly ambitious for the time. They did never recreate that, as far as I know.
Well, they recreated it for the TOS remaster when they actually CGI and all, and the CGI version that they it looks pretty cool. It looks realistic and stuff. Mm-hmm. Whereas the original was obviously kind of superimposed footage.
Right, more blue screeny or whatever.
It was pretty impressive for the time.
Yes,
though.
for the time.
For the time, it would have got everyone to sit up and go, "Holy crap!"
And it immediately conveys to the audience the size of the ship in ratio to the people serving aboard. So, which is why Roddenberry always wanted the bridge to be on top of the ship so that we would have an idea of the scale.
Fatheree, is that our last Easter egg?
Yes.
I would like to retract one of them in a way, or take one off the score, because I have an anti-Easter egg. The anti-Easter egg is that it turns out they weren't Borg.
Oh yeah, we made.
I just wanted to quick bring that up.
Yeah. Made it through the season with no Borg connections. I'm thrilled about that.
I overall think that's probably good. I'm weirded out by how close they got to it, either without knowing it, or teasing it kind of for no particular reason that I can think of. What did y'all think?
I as I said last episode, I was kind of made my peace with it and realized that symbolically, I kind of like the idea that the US's CIA created the ultimate evil, foreign evil other, symbolically.
You won me over with that argument.
But that was your argument originally, Dave.
Good job.
Okay, well then, yes,
I think you articulated it better than I did.
But I was also, I accept that plot-wise, it's problematic and cheesy. So I'm okay with them not doing it. I was okay with them doing it. So I kind of had pros and cons.
It would have been cool to see a cool continuity connection like that. But I didn't need it to be the origin of the fucking Borg.
And depending on how neutralized Control is, we still might get it in season 3.
I hope we don't see Control again. Like I said, it was a lame villain. But Anna, what do you got?
I mean, I would have been interested if it was the Borg, because I think social climate wise, the fear of technology overreaching and ruling our lives and being a part of everything we do, and weird targeted ads and shit that people complain about all the time. That fear of technology and us becoming inseparable. I think that this would have been the perfect time for something like that. But I acknowledge.
I guess if they hadn't made it I was going to say if they hadn't made it the point of the thing, because it's kind of an aside. It's not like the theme was that sort of science and faith sort of thing. But I hadn't thought about that. That we are culturally, we really are approaching that moment. What do they call that? Singularity.
Yeah.
We're probably coming up on that. So they may need to. If that happens, then Borg stories may be very different. It may be suddenly less of a wacky lark and more of a, remember before we were enslaved by robots?
But the Borg are too big to be just something humans created that on accident.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It sort of minimizes them somehow. Or
they're supposed to be a galaxy-wide threat and this ancient superpower that's kind of beyond what we can comprehend. I remember reading something in the Next Generation behind the scenes that an idea in season 2 of the Next Generation was that if Q is God, if he's an unfair God, then the Borg are meant to be like the devil of the Star Trek universe.
I just felt they were more Cthulhu-esque than the devil, but
and a cosmic horror element of it is in that first episode. This is something that Trent has brought up on here when we had him. when he brings up like that first episode. Is it Q Who in season 2 of Next Generation?
Sounds right.
Ridiculous name for a super serious episode. Yeah,
like what a dumb, charming little name.
When Picard is getting a little too cocky, where he's like, yeah, like we humans, we can be like these great Roddenberry, perfect humans of the future, and do all this great stuff, which I largely like having in Star Trek. But Q is like, yeah, let me show you something that you can handle, Jean-Luc. And he shows him the Borg.
It's like there is stuff out there that is so far beyond you that is so terrifying that you're nothing to it.
They're presented as like this fucking nightmare, and so it really does minimize their importance to make them. Something that 100 years earlier, people were accidentally screwing around with some AI and came up with this.
Right.
We do need to jump into our mailbag. Just if I missed any Easter eggs in this episode, be sure to let us know, and we will acknowledge your comment. Just like we're about to do some of the responses we've gotten this last week.
Okay, so first up we have our frequent contributor to our mail, Adam B. Owen, via Facebook.
Hi, Adam.
And I believe the context of this was that he had posted a link to that petition to get Pike his own show.
Yeah, to an article discussing the petition.
Right. And he simply comments, I mean, they have the sets already built.
My biggest objection to making this Pike show was going to be that it would be redundant to have 2 shows in the same time period about like 2 Starfleet ships,
right.
The Discovery and the Enterprise. It would be redundant, whereas in the past, Star Trek has always tried to make each show different from what's come before and also different from anything else that's on the air.
Right.
That's why DS9 wasn't allowed to have a ship when Next Generation was on the air.
Mm-hmm.
When Next Generation finished and they started Voyager's on the other side of the galaxy, so yeah, DS9 you can have a ship, you can have the Defiant, and you can like go around the Alpha Quadrant and do stuff there because it's not gonna overlap with the other show. Now, if Discovery is moved permanently to the future, I have no reason to object to a Pike show, and I actually really want it. I love these sets. I love the recreation of the Enterprise. I love the uniforms. I love the actors. I love the characters.
Yeah.
I want the Pike show.
I think the main objection would be it's sort of one more prequel that's roughly in Kirk's era and will perhaps somewhat approximate his kind of adventures. I'm 90% with you, though. What do y'all think?
I would absolutely watch it. I mean, overall, I'm for it. You know, I guess overall, I was impressed enough with Pike that seeing more adventures with Pike sounds like a net win. Though I do wonder if we've done enough Planet of the Week stories in 600-700 hours of Star Trek. But, you know, what the hell? Let's do some more Planet of the Weeks with new special effects on this Pike. It could be great.
I would be down for it. What do you think?
I know these are fighting words, but I actually don't like Picard all that much, and I'd much rather have a Pike show than a Picard show.
Oh, well, yeah, that's right. You were mentioning that earlier.
Let me ask you all this. If you didn't know what the future of Star Trek Discovery was going to be, and you were given the option, would you rather see a show of the Discovery characters wherever their story took them 1,000 years in the future, or B, a show that picks up where this episode ended with Pike on the Enterprise and that crew? Which show would you pick? I would pick the Pike one.
Discovery all the way. I'm much more. I would enjoy the Pike, but I'm much more interested in what they're going to do with Discovery next.
Assuming that they somewhat follow the tone of classic Trek, I'm such a episode of the week kind of person. A little bit of an anomaly in that sense that I would go Pike.
And I think Pike could still do season long art.
Sure. I would not assume that they would do exactly the style of it, and they can evolve it. But.
Anna, which one would you go with?
I wouldn't watch a Pike, or rather, I wouldn't rather a Pike show over the Discovery because, like, we have very set, like, plotted beginnings and endings for these characters going into this show. And I feel like it's really hard to generate, like, drama, especially, like, in the way that modern shows like to do with, like, the danger and the threat of death at all times. That I think it would be really hard to hang on to a Pike show, and part of it, I'm admitting, wanting to see is, like, nostalgia.
Right.
And also I have a pretty strong attachment to a lot of the disco characters, so I think it's unfair that you would make me pick between those.
I mean, I don't mind prequels if there's characters who we know aren't going to die, because if the drama is written well enough in the moment, it can still suck you in. And also, like, we all fucking know Burnham's not going to die halfway through a season on Discovery.
Yeah.
But you can still be engaged and invested in a scene that's putting her in danger.
I mean, that's fair, I guess.
But I guess there's at least the possibility, because they're so crazy with Discovery, that they do it, whereas there's no possibility that Pike can get killed.
Like, he has.
And even if you don't kill them, you can do all sorts of stuff with Pike and Spock. Or you can't stuff you can do with Michael and Saru that you cannot do with Pike and Spock because you have to match up with 60s Star Trek loosely. I mean,
like they could cut Burnham's arms off, and the only you can't do terrible things.
And give her like badass robo arms.
That
turn into like a weird anime or something.
Yeah, Jet would build her robo arms. We'd have robo Burnham.
Well, we're getting crazy.
Shall we move on to the next message?
Yes, we also have something on Twitter in regards to Captain Pike.
Yeah, this was really cool. This was posted to, I believe, Anson Mount's Twitter page from Michael Stepniak.
Yeah, Michael Stepniak, who's been a frequent commenter on Tex-Trek material. So thank you, Michael. And
very coolly referenced us as he was, and referenced something that Holly said last week. He tweeted, "Your Pike is amazing. I think Holly on @Tex-Trek podcast said it best that." Paraphrasing, the world is fucked up, and Pike is a character who represents the best of humanity, someone we aspire to be, who represents hope in an ugly world. And then, that got a like from Anson Mount.
And that's why I married her.
Yes, well played.
She's also gotten a message from my favorite Doctor Who novelist.
No, that's super awesome. So Anson Mount does his own podcast. It seems like it's like a creative process kind of thing. And... it's just kind of cool to know that we kind of pop a little on that radar.
Yeah, so I'm glad that Anson Mount approves of stuff that has been discussed here on Tex-Trek.
Yep.
And Anson, if you're checking this out, if you want me to guest on The Well on your podcast, I will try to make time for that. I think we might be able to work something out. I got a busy year planned for Tex-Trek, but
his agent could call you.
I will attempt to get something on the books if you're down for that.
He'll call you and ask, "How can I get Holly on the show?"
Yes.
And also, if you want to get a cup of coffee sometime, call me.
Yeah. And our final comment here is from YouTube from Jude Beacom. Sorry.
Hi, Jude.
Hi, Jude. I put off watching the Game of Thrones premiere for this installment. You're welcome, Tex-Trek.
Yes. So last week we actually dropped the Tex-Trek podcast right as the Game of Thrones, the most popular TV show of the last decade, was premiering its final season. But we still had people hitting up the podcast, hitting up the YouTube video as soon as it dropped. So I am humbled by our loyal audience.
Yeah, that really is super cool. I cannot ask for anything more than for someone to postpone Game of Thrones. Years ago, I was running a role-playing game during one of the premieres of Game of Thrones, or it might have actually just been a regular episode, and everybody in the game was like, Dave, we're missing Game of Thrones for this. And I was like, oh my God. I felt so, I'm like, I hate you all now. But not Jude there. Jude is awesome. Jude is better than any of the people I've ever gamed with.
Yes, and Jude has left us comments and feedback before, and so thank you for that, Jude. Thank you for everyone who's commented this season that we've been talking about Star Trek Discovery. And I wish I could go through a list and like shout out everyone's name and give you all recognition and thank you for being part of the conversation. But I'm scared I'm gonna forget someone in there. But just all of you who have responded to us in some fashion, thank you so much. I put a lot of time into this, and my guests go out of their way to make appearances here, and it really means a lot to me that people enjoy what we have to say and. Or listening, and I'm not just rambling into a void somewhere.
Word. Total agreement, and I'm interested to hear what everybody has to say. I've already seen some comments about the big finale, general thoughts on season 2 wrapping up.
Yeah, we want to hear all that stuff. What did you think about this last episode, and what did you think of season 2 in general? And please stick around. Please keep tuning in each week, because me and Dave have a lot to talk about this year. We're going to try to keep the weekly format up for a little bit and just to see how that goes. And we'll be talking about season 2 in its entirety next week. And I'm going to try to go back and rewatch the whole thing and see what I think about those early episodes now that I know how everything ended and I kind of give a general impression of the entire season. And then after that, we have a lot of other cool stuff. We're actually going to revisit All Good Things, the series finale of Next Generation, because we are approaching its 25th anniversary. We're going to be talking about all 13 Star Trek movies this year. And so we'll be spending our summer talking about a lot of Star Trek movies. We also have Star Trek Las Vegas coming up. I have just booked my flight to Las Vegas, so I'm excited about that. If any of y'all are going to be at STLV, if you see me, by all means, come and say something to me. I would love to talk to some of y'all face to face in person, and we'll be covering STLV. We're going to have the news for the Picard show that's going into development, that's going into production. That there's going to be trailers and some story details and all kinds of cool stuff to talk about with y'all. So definitely please stick around, because we have a lot to talk about. This is going to be a very big year.
Hell yeah.
And that's all we have for tonight, though. So we'll be back Sunday to talk about Star Trek Discovery Season 2. And until then, as always,
Live long and prosper, y'all.
Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter, @TXTrek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.